The arrival of the invaders. The sky above Earth was clear. The sun shone brightly, casting its warmth on the vast lands below. Birds flew high in the sky, and the world seemed peaceful. But that peace was about to be shattered. Far above in space, an enormous alien ship approached Earth. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. The ship was dark and sleek, shaped like a giant triangle with glowing symbols all over it. Inside the ship, alien beings, tall, thin, and with smooth gray skin, moved around quickly. Their eyes, black and deep, showed no emotion. They were on a mission to conquer. These beings, known as the Zorvans, had visited many planets before, and they had never encountered anything that could stop them. Their technology was far ahead of anything humans could imagine. They had ships that could travel faster than the speed of light and weapons that could destroy entire cities with a single blast. But as they approached Earth, the Zorvans did not focus on human cities. They had their eyes set on something else, something more dangerous. On Earth, the Zorvans had studied the planet and found the animals that they feared the most. The lions. Fierce and powerful, lions ruled the African plains, their roars echoing across the savanna. The Zorvans had heard stories of these creatures' strength and their ability to hunt in packs. They were not foolish enough to think they could easily defeat such a creature. As the Zorvans landed on Earth, they immediately began their operations. They set up high-tech bases and started scanning the areas where lions were known to live. They sent out drones, machines that could fly through the air, and scan everything around them. The lions were not the only animals that caught the Zorvans' attention, but they were the primary concern. The Zorvans needed to control Earth, and they knew the lions would be a major threat. But what the Zorvans didn't realize was that they were not the only creatures on Earth with a strength they couldn't understand. There was another animal that roamed the savanna, an animal that lived in the shadows of the lions, feared and underestimated by many. This animal would soon show the Zorvans just how wrong they were. As the Zorvans prepared for their first encounter with the lions, they launched their first attack. Their ships hovered high above the African plains, and their drones descended like dark shadows. The lions, sensing the danger, gathered their prides and prepared to defend their territory. The Zorvans watched from above, analyzing the lions' movements, trying to find a weakness. The lions roared as they charged into the open, their powerful muscles rippling with each movement. They attacked the drones with incredible speed, swiping at them with their sharp claws, their jaws snapping with power. The drones tried to retaliate, firing lasers from above, but the lions were too quick. One by one, the drones fell from the sky, their metal bodies crashing to the ground. The Zorvans watched in shock. They had not expected the lions to fight back so fiercely. Their advanced technology was no match for the raw power and agility of the lions. The battle raged on for hours, with the lions showing no sign of stopping. But even as the lions were winning, the Zorvans weren't completely helpless. They had other tricks up their sleeves. In the shadows of the savanna, hidden away from the lion's sight, a small, seemingly insignificant creature watched the battle unfold. This creature was neither large nor particularly powerful compared to the lions. It was a hyena. The hyena, a scavenger by nature, had always lived in the background, staying out of the lion's way, taking what was left after they had finished hunting. The lions feared and respected the hyena in their own way. They knew the hyenas were clever, but they never considered them a serious threat. They thought the hyena was nothing more than a nuisance, a creature that would never dare to challenge them directly. But what the lions didn't know, and what the Zorvans had failed to realize, was that the hyena was far more dangerous than anyone gave it credit for. While the lions were fighting the alien drones, the hyenas were quietly observing, waiting. They were patient. They understood the land better than anyone. They knew how to survive, how to adapt, and they knew how to attack when the time was right. The Zorvans, thinking the lions had secured their victory, began to move their forces back, planning their next move. But they hadn't counted on the hyenas. Slowly and quietly, the hyenas started to gather in the shadows, circling around the edges of the battlefield. The Zorvans were too focused on the lions. They didn't even notice the change in the air, the subtle shift in the balance of power. And in that moment, the hyenas prepared to make their move. The lions' last stand. The battle raged on, the sky darkened by the smoke of fallen alien drones and the roar of lions echoing through the plains. The Zorvans had never expected this kind of resistance. They had encountered many worlds, many species, but nothing like the lions. Their power was undeniable, their speed and strength overwhelming. Yet even as the lions charged forward, their hearts pounding with the thrill of battle, they knew that their victory might not last. The Zorvans' drones had been destroyed, but the aliens were not finished. They were far more than just machines. The Zorvans had technology that could reshape reality, and they were quickly regrouping, planning their next move. They knew they needed to adjust their tactics if they were going to survive. The Zorvans' leader, a tall and imposing figure with glowing red eyes, stood at the center of the command room, observing the battle below. He was calm, but his mind raced. The lions had proven to be a challenge, but they had underestimated the true threat of the savannah. "We must adapt," he said coldly. "Launch the new plan. Focus on the lions' weaknesses. The drones failed, but we have other methods." Below, in the thick of the battle, the lions fought with all their might. Their massive paws slammed into the ground, their powerful jaws crushing the alien machines. But even as they fought, they could feel the fatigue creeping into their muscles. The fight was taking its toll. The aliens were retreating, but they were preparing something more dangerous. As the lions pressed forward, their leader, a massive male lion with a golden mane, gave the command to charge. His pride followed, their fierce roars filling the air as they hunted down the last of the alien drones. The lions had one goal: to drive the invaders from their land. But then, a strange sound echoed from the shadows. It was a low, eerie laugh. The lions paused, their ears twitching as they looked around, trying to locate the source of the noise. The hyenas, hidden in the tall grass, had been waiting for this moment. The lions had grown distracted, focused on the aliens, and now the hyenas were ready to strike. From the shadows, a small group of hyenas emerged, their eyes gleaming with hunger and intelligence. They had been quietly observing the lions' movements, learning their weaknesses, and now they were ready to act. The hyenas were not interested in fighting the lions directly. They had a different plan. The lions had grown used to being the top predators, their strength unmatched on the savannah. But the hyenas were clever, and they knew that brute strength wasn't always the key to victory. They knew that to defeat the lions, they would need to outsmart them. The hyenas began to move quickly, darting between the rocks and trees, circling around the lions. At first, the lions didn't take them seriously. They had always been the ones in charge, the ones who led the hunt. But the hyenas had a different approach. They didn't fight like the lions. They didn't rely on strength alone. They were experts in cunning and teamwork. As the lions continued to chase the retreating Zorvans, the hyenas moved in, striking at the vulnerable spots. One by one, the hyenas attacked the lions' flanks, using their sharp teeth to bite and tear at their legs. The lions, caught off guard, roared in pain and confusion. The Lion King, seeing his pride being attacked from all sides, let out a powerful roar, calling his warriors to defend themselves. But it was too late. The hyenas were already gone, slipping back into the shadows as quickly as they had come. They knew that if they faced the lions head-on, they would be outmatched. But by using their speed, their knowledge of the land, and their teamwork, they could take down even the strongest predator. The lions, now injured and confused, were forced to retreat. Their pride, once unshakable, was beginning to crumble. The Zorvans, who had been watching from above, realized what had happened. The hyenas had turned the tide of battle. They were no longer just scavengers. They had become a force to be reckoned with. The Lion King, battered but not broken, gathered his pride. "We cannot let them win," he growled, his eyes blazing with fury. "We must hold the line. We must show them the strength of our pride." But the hyenas were already preparing for their next move. The battle was far from over. The hyenas' unseen strength. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm orange glow across the savanna. The lion pride, weary and wounded from their encounters with the Zorvans and the unexpected ambush from the hyenas, had gathered in a shaded area. Their once fierce roars had quieted, replaced by low growls of frustration and confusion. Their pride, once so powerful, now seemed fragile. They knew they could fight off the aliens, but the hyenas were something else entirely. The Lion King, bloodied and bruised, but still holding on to his dignity, paced back and forth. His pride had never faced an enemy like this before. They had fought other animals, yes, elephants, buffaloes, even other prides, but never had they encountered such cunning, such strategy. The hyenas were not just scavengers. They were predators in their own right, working together in a way the lions could not understand. "They are nothing but scavengers," one of the lionesses muttered, still seething with anger. "We are the kings of this land. They have no right to challenge us." The Lion King, however, shook his head. He could no longer deny what was happening. The hyenas had outsmarted them, turning their own strength against them. The lions could never match the speed and cleverness of the hyenas. It was something they had taken for granted, believing that only strength mattered. Now, the very creatures they had once looked down upon were turning the tide of battle. Meanwhile, the hyenas were preparing for the next phase of their plan. They had been watching the lions, waiting for the right moment to strike. The hyenas were not only clever, but they were also patient. They knew the lions were tired, their energy drained by the constant fighting with the Zorvans and their failure to defeat the hyenas. Now, the hyenas would strike where it hurt most. The leader of the hyena clan, a large and scared individual named Kuro, sat silently in the shadows, his yellow eyes gleaming with intelligence. He had seen what the lions were capable of, but he also knew their weaknesses. Unlike the lions, who relied on brute strength, the hyenas thrived on their cunning and teamwork. They understood the land, the rhythms of the savanna, and the way the animals interacted with each other. "We have to strike fast and hit them where it hurts," Kuro whispered to his pack. "Their pride is fractured. If we can divide them, we can finish this." The hyenas began to move, their bodies blending into the tall grass. They split into smaller groups, each moving silently towards the lion pride. The lions, unaware of the threat that loomed, were still recovering from their previous battles. They did not know that the hyenas were watching them, waiting for the perfect moment. Kuro and his pack moved with precision. They had been watching the lions for days, learning their patterns, their movements, and their weaknesses. They knew that lions, despite their strength, were not as quick or as adaptable as the hyenas, and the Zorvans' attack had left them vulnerable. Their pride was broken, and the hyenas were ready to finish what the aliens had started. Suddenly, a loud cry echoed through the air. A young lioness, separated from the main group, was caught by a pack of hyenas. Her terrified roar pierced the air, alerting the other lions to the danger. The Lion King, hearing the cry, immediately charged toward the sound, followed by several members of his pride. But by the time they arrived, the hyenas had already retreated into the tall grass, leaving behind only the scent of blood and the sound of the young lioness's heavy breathing. "This is not a fight we can win with strength alone," the Lion King muttered to himself, his heart heavy with the weight of the realization. "We must outsmart them." But the lions were not the only ones learning. The Zorvans, from their high-tech ships, were observing everything. They had seen the lions struggle against the hyenas and had realized that the hyenas' strength was not in their size or power, but in their ability to think. The Zorvans had underestimated the hyenas just as much as the lions had, but now they saw that these scavengers were more dangerous than they could have imagined. The Zorvans decided that it was time to change their tactics once again. They could no longer rely solely on brute force. They had to adapt, just like the hyenas. The alien leader's voice crackled over the intercom, and his orders were clear. Deploy the new units. We are going to need all our strength to defeat these creatures. But the hyenas, with their sharp minds and quick thinking, were already one step ahead. They had been planning, watching, waiting. They knew that if they could weaken the lions even further, they would be able to break them completely. The aliens who had come to Earth with plans of domination were now faced with a threat they had never considered: the hidden strength of the hyena. As the hyenas scattered and regrouped, the lions knew they had no choice but to face their true enemies, not just the aliens, but the very creatures they had once overlooked. The lion's pride, once so powerful, was now fractured and vulnerable. And in the shadows, the hyenas were waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. The Zorvan's new strategy. The stars above the savannah twinkled like distant diamonds, casting a faint glow over the now silent plains. The lions, still reeling from their last encounter with the hyenas, had retreated into the shadows of the dense trees, nursing their wounds. Their pride, once proud and fierce, now seemed uncertain. They had fought countless battles before, but this was different. The Zorvans had arrived, and the hyenas had proven to be more than they could handle. It was a battle they were not prepared for. Yet, as the lions huddled together, planning their next move, the real battle was unfolding in the skies above. The Zorvans, observing from their high-tech ships, had seen enough. They had learned from their past mistakes and realized that brute force alone would not win them this war. They needed something more, a strategy that would break the lion's spirit and crush the hyena's cunning once and for all. The alien leader, towering and calm, stood at the heart of his command center, the glowing map of Earth flickering on the screen before him. His cold, red eyes scanned the map, pinpointing key locations. The battle was not just about strength anymore. It was about controlling the land. The Zorvans had already decided. They would strike at the heart of the savannah, where both the lions and the hyenas would have to fight or die. We must create a trap, the Zorvan leader said, his voice deep and commanding. We will use their pride against them. The lions are strong, but they are prideful. They believe in their power. Let's show them what happens when they underestimate us. The Zorvan's new plan was simple but effective. They would manipulate the terrain, forcing the lions and the hyenas into a trap where neither would have the advantage. The aliens would unleash a wave of high-tech, automated drones that would mimic the lions' own hunting patterns, making them think that another pride had moved in. Meanwhile, the Zorvans would infiltrate the heart of the savannah, sowing confusion and fear among the creatures that called it home. As the Zorvans made their preparations, the hyenas, too, were plotting their next move. Kuro, the leader of the hyena pack, watched the lions from a distance, his eyes narrowing as he studied their movements. The lions, despite their recent setbacks, were still powerful. But Kuro had something they didn't: the element of surprise. The lions are desperate, Kuro whispered to his pack. They think they can fight the Zorvans and win. But they are blind to what's coming. We must strike before they even realize it. Kuro's plan was simple: divide and conquer. He would continue to lead his pack in hit-and-run attacks on the lions, striking where they were weakest. But he also knew that he couldn't take on the Zorvans directly. The aliens were too powerful, too advanced. He needed the lions, weak as they were, to do the heavy lifting. So, Kuro quietly sent his scouts to observe the lions, watching for any signs of weakness. The hyenas knew that the lions, despite their pride, had one thing they could not control: their need for dominance. If the lions could be manipulated, if their pride could be shattered, then the hyenas would be able to take over without ever lifting a paw in direct battle. Meanwhile, the Zorvan's ships descended from the sky, casting long shadows over the African plains. The drones began to move, scanning the environment with cold precision. The lions, seeing the drones in the distance, believed they were under attack by another alien force. Their instinct to defend their territory kicked in, and they began to gather together, preparing for a fight. But this time, they were not prepared for what was coming. The Zorvans had lured them into the perfect trap. As the lions charged forward, believing they were fighting for their survival, the Zorvans unleashed their next weapon. A series of seismic pulses shook the ground beneath them, creating artificial barriers and trenches that separated the lions from their prey. The lions roared in anger as the earth itself seemed to turn against them. The Zorvans' drones moved faster, attacking from the skies, creating chaos and confusion. But it was not just the lions who were under attack. The hyenas, who had been lurking in the shadows, suddenly found themselves caught in the same trap. The seismic pulses had altered the land in a way they couldn't predict, and the hyenas were forced to retreat into the deep grasslands to avoid being caught in the chaos. The lions, however, were not ready to give up. Their pride and instincts kept them charging forward, trying to break free from the Zorvans' traps. They fought back with all their might, but every time they thought they had a victory, another pulse shook the ground beneath them, throwing them off balance. It seemed as if the Zorvans had finally found the perfect way to defeat both the lions and the hyenas at once. The savannah was now a battlefield, the ground torn and divided. The lions, the hyenas, and the Zorvans were all caught in a deadly game, one where only the most adaptable would survive. But in the shadows of the chaos, Kuro, the hyena leader, was watching. He had seen enough to understand the true nature of the Zorvans' plan. They had underestimated the land, and they had underestimated him. He knew that the key to victory was not fighting head-on, but outsmarting the invaders, and he was ready to strike when the time was right. The lions, too, had not given up. Despite the traps, despite the chaos, their pride still burned strong. They would not let the Zorvans win. They would fight until the last breath. But the real question was, would they be able to unite against the Zorvans, or would they remain divided, their pride shattered forever? The tides turned. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and dust as the battle for the savannah raged on. The Zorvans had unleashed their most advanced weapons, and the lions and hyenas were caught in their deadly trap. The seismic pulses had torn apart the terrain, creating deep rifts and walls that separated the battlefield into isolated zones. The lions fought valiantly, their powerful roars echoing across the plains, but they were disoriented, unable to adapt to the Zorvans' relentless strategy. But as the Zorvans' drones continued their relentless assault, something unexpected happened. The hyenas, whose speed and cunning had always given them an edge, began to regroup. Despite the traps set by the Zorvans, the hyenas had learned to adapt to the chaos. They were quick, smarter than most predators, and they knew the land better than anyone. With every pulse, they shifted their tactics, slipping between the cracks in the earth, using the very disruption to their advantage. Kuro, the hyena leader, stood in the shadows, watching the lions struggle. He could see that the lions were not giving up, but they were weakening. Their strength was being drained by the constant onslaught of the Zorvans' attacks. The lions' pride was their greatest weapon, but it was also their greatest weakness. They fought as individuals, relying on their strength and power, but they lacked the unity and agility that the hyenas possessed. "We must strike now," Kuro muttered to himself, his eyes gleaming with determination. "The lions are breaking. The Zorvans are strong, but they don't understand the savannah. We know it better than anyone." Kuro's pack, smaller but far more agile than the lions, had already begun moving into position. They circled the Zorvans' drones, using their speed to remain unseen. The drones, focused on the lions, had not yet detected the hyenas. They were the perfect distraction, the key to turning the tide of battle. Meanwhile, the Lion King, bloodied and exhausted, stood at the forefront of his pride. His once golden mane was now matted with dirt and blood, but his eyes burned with the same fire they always had. He knew they could not hold out much longer. The Zorvans were relentless, and the hyenas, despite their small numbers, were proving to be more dangerous than anticipated. "Hold strong," the Lion King roared. "We fight for our land. We fight for our pride. The lions, despite their fatigue, rallied behind their leader. They charged forward, their powerful bodies shaking the ground beneath them as they clashed with the Zorvan's drones. The aliens fought back fiercely, their machines weaving through the lions' attacks, but it was clear the lions were growing weaker with each passing moment. The Lion King felt his strength waning. His muscles burned, and his vision blurred from exhaustion. But he refused to back down. His pride depended on him. With one final, desperate charge, he leaped towards the nearest drone, his claws slashing through the air. But just as he was about to land the killing blow, the ground beneath him trembled once more. The seismic pulse was too powerful. The Lion King fell to the earth, his body crashing into the cracked ground, dazed and unable to move. It was in that moment of vulnerability that the hyenas struck. Kuro and his pack emerged from the shadows, their eyes glinting with malice. With lightning-fast movements, they attacked the Zorvan's drones, using their superior speed and coordination to disable the machines. The Zorvans had not expected this. No one had. The hyenas' swift and calculated strikes began to take their toll on the alien forces. As the drones malfunctioned and fell to the ground, the Zorvans scrambled to adjust their tactics. But it was too late. The hyenas had disrupted the Zorvans' control. The aliens' once perfect strategy was unraveling before their eyes. The lions, seeing the sudden change in the tide, rallied once more. The hyenas had created an opening. With a powerful roar, the Lion King leaped back to his feet, his wounds forgotten in the heat of battle. He charged once again at the nearest drone, his pride following him with renewed strength. The lions, now united, fought with everything they had left, their attacks more coordinated than ever before. But it was not just the lions and hyenas who were fighting now. The Zorvans, realizing that their drones were no longer effective, began deploying ground forces. Alien soldiers, clad in advanced armor, stormed onto the battlefield, ready to engage in close combat. The battle had reached a new level. It was no longer just a war of machines and strength. It was a fight for survival. The lions and hyenas, once enemies, now found themselves forced into an uneasy alliance. The Zorvans, who had once thought they could easily conquer this world, now faced an enemy they had not anticipated, the unity of the Earth's creatures. Kuro, seeing the chaos unfold, turned to his pack. The lions may not understand us, but now they know the truth. We are stronger together than we are apart. Let's finish this. The hyenas attacked once more, their numbers growing as they leaped from the shadows, striking the alien soldiers with deadly precision. The lions, emboldened by the hyenas' bravery, fought harder, their pride stronger than ever. Together, the two species pushed the Zorvans back, forcing them to retreat. As the sun set over the savannah, the battlefield quieted. The Zorvans, beaten and broken, had been driven from the land. The lions and hyenas stood side by side, the once unthinkable alliance now a reality. The savannah was theirs once more. But as the creatures of the earth looked out over the horizon, they knew this was not the end. The Zorvans would return, and when they did, they would face a new force, an alliance of creatures who had learned that strength did not lie solely in power, but in unity. The aftermath, and the growing storm. The battlefield lay in ruins, scattered with debris from broken drones, twisted metal, and the remnants of the Zorvans' technology. The air still crackled with tension, the heavy scent of smoke lingering in the atmosphere. The sun, now dipping below the horizon, cast an eerie, blood-red glow over the savannah. It was a scene of victory, but also one of quiet uncertainty. The lions and hyenas, their alliance forged in the heat of battle, stood side by side, panting, battered but triumphant. The Zorvans had retreated, their forces decimated, but the creatures of the savannah knew that the invaders would not stay away for long. The Zorvans were relentless, and the Earth's defenders had only won a single battle in what could become a much longer war. The Lion King, his golden mane matted with blood and dirt, stood at the forefront of the gathered pride. His eyes were filled with weariness, but also something else: hope. The lions had fought with all their strength, and with the help of the hyenas, they had driven the aliens away. For the first time in what felt like forever, the Lion King felt the weight of leadership lift, if only for a moment. "We did it," the Lion King said, his voice hoarse but steady. "But this is just the beginning. We have proven that the earth will not bow to invaders. Not while we still stand." The hyena leader, Kuro, stood a few steps behind him, observing the pride. He had never expected to find himself standing alongside the lions, but there was an unspoken respect between the two leaders now. Kuro, scared from the battle but unbroken, nodded his approval. "This fight is not over," Kuro growled. "The Zorvans may have been defeated today, but their eyes are always watching. They will return with more forces, and next time, they may not be so easily driven off." The Lion King turned to face him, his golden eyes narrowing with resolve. "We will be ready. We must be ready. And we must unite, not just with each other, but with every creature of the earth. The Zorvans were not our only enemy. The land itself is filled with dangers." Kuro's eyes gleamed. "Then we will prepare. The hyenas know the land. We can teach the lions the ways of the hunt, and together we will become a force that no enemy can defeat." As the two leaders spoke, the other creatures of the savannah began to regroup. The lionesses, though weary, kept a close watch on their surroundings, alert to any signs of danger. The young cubs, though frightened by the violence of the battle, were beginning to understand the weight of their world, a world where survival was a constant struggle. Despite the victory, there was a sense of unease in the air. The Zorvans had underestimated the power of the Earth's creatures, but they had not been defeated completely. The technology they had unleashed on the savannah was only a glimpse of their true capabilities. The lions, the hyenas, and all the creatures of the land knew that the peace they had fought for would not last long. In the sky above, the faint outline of the Zorvan ship could still be seen, retreating into the distance. It was the first sign that the invaders had not given up. They had tasted defeat, but they were far from broken. The question now was not whether the Zorvans would return, it was when. And when they did, they would come back stronger. The call to action. Back in the heart of the savannah, the lions and hyenas gathered for what would be the beginning of something greater than either species had ever imagined. For the first time, the two species understood that survival meant more than strength. It meant unity. The Lion King turned to Kuro, his expression one of rare gratitude. "Your pack has saved us today, Kuro. Without your help, we would have been lost. But now we must go further. We must unite all the creatures of this land. Every species, whether predator or prey, must join us." Kuro nodded gravely. "We will need more than just strength in numbers. The Zorvans will have new tricks up their sleeves. Their technology is unlike anything we've ever faced. But there is something they do not understand. Earth's creatures fight with the land. The Zorvans fight with technology, but we fight with our instincts, our unity, and the very ground beneath our feet." As the two leaders spoke, the horizon darkened, and the wind began to pick up. There was something in the air, something that felt like a storm was brewing. Whether it was the growing tension between the lions and hyenas, or the unknown future of the Zorvans, the land was on the verge of change. The Lion King raised his head to the sky, sensing the change. "The Zorvans will return, but we will be ready. We will form alliances with every creature that calls this land home. And when they come back, they will find that Earth's creatures are not so easily conquered." With that, the Lion King and Kuro turned back toward their respective packs. There was no time for celebration. The real fight was still ahead of them. The lions and hyenas were now allies, but they knew that unity would take more than just words. They would have to prove it through every battle that lay ahead. In the distance, the Zorvan ships were still retreating, but their presence was a constant reminder of the battle that was far from over. The savannah was quiet for now, but beneath the surface, the storm was brewing. The creatures of Earth had won a battle, but they knew the war had only just begun. The final stand. The savannah was silent, its vast landscape stretching endlessly under the pale light of dawn. A strange calm had settled over the land, but beneath it there was an undeniable tension. The lions, the hyenas, and every creature of the earth knew that the peace they had fought so hard to gain was fragile. Soon, the storm would come. The Zorvans would return. The Lion King stood on a high rock, looking out over the plains. His once proud mane, now tattered from battle, blew gently in the breeze. He was thinking of his pride, their strength, their unity, and how they had fought alongside the hyenas to win the previous battle. But he also thought of the Zorvans. The aliens may have retreated, but the Lion King could feel it deep in his bones. This war was far from over. Beside him, Kuro, the hyena leader, paced restlessly. He had never been one to stand still for long, but today, even the quick-witted hyena seemed lost in thought. The hyenas had fought bravely alongside the lions, and now they were preparing for a new phase in the war. "We cannot rely on our strength alone," Kuro said, his voice steady but heavy with concern. "The Zorvans are coming back, and they will have more forces. Their technology is powerful, and we know nothing about their true numbers." The Lion King nodded solemnly. "I know, but we have one thing they don't. We understand this land. We know how to survive here. We know how to fight as one." Kuro's eyes gleamed. "Yes, the Zorvans may have their machines and weapons, but we have the earth itself on our side. If we fight smart, if we unite the creatures of the land, we can defeat them." In the distance, the first signs of movement were spotted on the horizon. A dark shadow appeared in the sky. A ship, unmistakably alien. It was small at first, just a dot in the sky, but it grew larger with every passing moment. More ships were following, their sleek forms cutting through the sky like a predator hunting its prey. The Lion King's heart sank as he saw the ships approach. "It's begun," he murmured. "The Zorvans are back." The hyenas, already on alert, began to move swiftly through the tall grasses, sending signals to the rest of the pack. They had prepared for this moment. The lions, too, began to assemble. The time for waiting was over. The creatures of the earth would face the Zorvans together, or they would perish. As the alien ships descended into the savannah, the ground began to tremble. The Zorvans were deploying their ground forces, alien soldiers, armored in high-tech gear, ready to fight. The battlefield was about to explode in a fury of claws, teeth, and advanced technology. Kuro growled low, his voice like a warning. "Remember what we learned. The Zorvans' machines are strong, but they're not invincible. We have to hit them where it hurts. We fight in the shadows, in the grass, and we use the land to our advantage." The Lion King turned to face his pride. His voice was calm, but there was fire in it. "Today, we make our stand. We will not let this land fall to the invaders. We fight for our home. We fight for the future of the savannah. Every creature here, whether predator or prey, will stand together." With that, the battle began. The Zorvan ships landed, their technology buzzing with alien energy. The ground was torn apart as their forces began to deploy. The earth seemed to shake beneath the weight of the alien machines as they marched forward, ready to claim the savannah as their own. But the lions and hyenas were ready. With a roar, the Lion King led his pride into battle. They charged at the advancing Zorvans, their powerful bodies cutting through the grass like a wave crashing against the shore. The hyenas, swift and cunning, darted through the shadows, attacking the alien soldiers from all sides. The Zorvans fought back with their advanced weapons, firing blasts of energy that ripped through the air. But the Earth's creatures were relentless. The lions fought with their claws and teeth, striking at the Zorvan soldiers with deadly precision. The hyenas, using their speed and agility, struck quickly and disappeared into the tall grass before the aliens could even react. But the Zorvans were not easily defeated. They had learned from their previous mistakes and were now deploying their most advanced technology: drones, mech suits, and force fields that seemed impenetrable. The Lion King, facing the alien leader in battle, saw the true power of the Zorvans. The alien commander stood tall, its armored body reflecting the glow of the battlefield. "This is your final stand, creatures of Earth," the Zorvan commander said, his voice cold and mechanical. "You cannot win." The Lion King roared in defiance, charging at the Zorvan leader with all the power he could muster. But the alien's energy shield blocked his every strike. The battle seemed hopeless. The lions were struggling to break through the Zorvan's defenses, and the hyenas, though agile, were being overwhelmed by the sheer number of alien soldiers. Just as all hope seemed lost, Kuro's voice rang out across the battlefield. "We have one final weapon." The Lion King turned to see what Kuro meant. In the distance, the creatures of the savannah, elephants, giraffes, rhinos, and even the smaller animals, were charging forward. The land itself had answered the call. The animals of the savannah, from the smallest to the largest, had come together to fight for their home. With the strength of every creature united, the tide of the battle began to shift. The elephants trampled the Zorvan's machines, while the giraffes used their long necks to strike from above. The rhinos charged through the alien soldiers, their massive bodies crashing into anything that stood in their way. The Zorvans were stunned by the sheer force of the Earth's creatures working together. They had never seen such unity, such power. Slowly, they began to retreat, their forces overwhelmed by the might of the savannah's defenders. As the last of the Zorvan's soldiers fell, the Lion King stood tall, his chest heaving with exhaustion. He looked over the battlefield, where the creatures of the earth stood victorious. "We did it," he said quietly. "Together, we have won." The savannah was theirs once more. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the Lion King knew this was only the beginning. The Zorvans had been defeated, but their threat was not gone. The Earth's creatures would have to stay united, stronger than ever, to protect their world from any who would try to take it. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the Lion King made a vow to protect the savannah and its creatures for as long as he lived.